Prior to Kinsella, Mindy served as the president and CEO of WW International from 2017 to 2022, steering the company through a successful rebrand, and as a member of the board of directors through March of 2022. Before WW, Mindy served as the CEO and a member of the board of directors for HSNI from 2006 to 2017, where she oversaw a $4 billion direct-to-consumer retail portfolio. Before HSNI, Mindy served as CEO of IAC Retail, the former parent company of HSNI. She successfully took IAC Retail public in 2008 and subsequently became the CEO of HSNI until 2017. Before joining IAC, Mindy served as Global Vice President at Nike Inc., where she oversaw its $4 billion global apparel business and served as co-chair of Nike's Women's Leadership Council. Earlier in her career, Mindy served as president and CEO of Polo Jeans Company, vice president of new business development at Polo Ralph Lauren Corporation, and president of Chaps Ralph Lauren. She also held senior positions at Tommy Hilfiger. Mindy was appointed to the Digital Economy Board of Advisors for the Chamber of Commerce during the Obama administration, where she served as an advisor from 2014 to 2017. She also served as the chairman of the National Retail Federation and chairman for the NRF Foundation. Mindy currently serves on the board and executive committee at UNICEF USA and is a member of the board of directors of Fanatics Inc., Vault Health, and Hungry Root, as well as a board of visitors of Columbia School of Engineering. Welcome to the stage, Mindy Grossman.
I'll take the water. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. Thanks. All right.
Morning, everyone. It's great to be here.
Mindy joins us from New York and then has just come down to visit with some family. Good, wow. Here in the St. Pete area, and she'll be getting back here before too long, right?
I just bought another place in downtown St. Pete, so you're stuck with me.
Awesome. You're welcome back anytime, for sure. Okay, I'd like to start from the beginning. When we talked previously, you shared that you were adopted, and you actually marked that as the beginning of your CEO journey. Can you share that experience with us and tell us how that's driven and shaped who you are today?
Sure. You know, I always say my CEO journey started at 3 days old. You know, my mom didn't finish high school. She was taking care of a sick parent, and my dad did, but went into the military. They got married. She was 18. He was 22, and all they wanted was a child. 10 years went by. My father worked nights in the produce business. They couldn't afford to adopt a child. And one night, my father came in to work, and his boss, who loved him, just couldn't take it anymore, how frustrated and devastated they were not to be able to have a child. And my father got to work at midnight one day, and there was Charlie with an envelope, and he handed him the envelope, and it was the money to adopt a child, and I was the child. So from the time I could remember, my parents told me, you know, you have this, you're special, you can do anything you want, and you've been given this gift, and you need to use this gift. And I never forgot that. And I said, if I'm going to do anything, I've got to have impact. You know, I can't not utilize what I've been given. And so I was very, very serious as a kid growing up. Finished high school at 16, went into college, was going to be a lawyer, got engaged when I was 19. So everything was set. And then in my last semester, going into my last semester, senior year, I literally had an epiphany and said, I can't do this. I'm a different person today than when I thought this was my path. So imagine calling your stereotypical Jewish parents and saying, I need to tell you something. I'm breaking my engagement. I'm not getting married. I'm not going to law school in the fall, and I'm moving to New York right now. Silence. But that's what I did. And, you know, there I was in New York in 1977, wasn't even 21. And I don't know what did it, but I said, I want to be in the business of creativity. I may not be the creator, but I want to be in that business. And I ended up starting in the menswear business. But the big takeaway from all of that, which is definitely part of my philosophy today, is that, you know, risk-taking and boldness is the essence of transformation, and not taking the risk is often riskier than taking the risk and being able to figure out and pivot and be along the way. And so that really set my entire career path. So you never know what one moment and one thing that someone did out of kindness can do, and it can change lives.
Absolutely. And to hear all the different places you've been, it's amazing what you've done with that opportunity. So that's just so cool. In 2000, Phil Knight brought you in to oversee Nike's worldwide multi-billion-dollar apparel business and re-accelerate it. Can you tell us about your time at Nike and what strategies you used to re-accelerate the Nike brand?
Yeah, so what happened was, you know, I'd worked for Ralph Lauren for 10 years. I took over and turned around Chaps Ralph Lauren. Then I ran new business development and worked on the business plan for Polo Jeans Company. And we launched it, and I have such respect for entrepreneurs because I know what it was like to launch a company, but I had someone else's money, right? And it was unbelievable. We went from 0 to 450 million in a matter of years. We were going to go public. And then Jones New York came in and acquired the company. And I realized that's not where I wanted to be. I didn't have a cultural fit. And I got this phone call from Phil Knight. And Phil had just come back into Nike. He had stepped out, put a new CEO in, and the company was really going through a difficult period. They had all their labor problems. They ran a campaign at the Atlanta Olympics that devastated the athletes. You don't win silver, you lose gold. You know, they lost the brand way, and Phil said, I'm coming back. And he decided to build a new executive team. And what he really wanted to do, and why he called and was talking to me, he really wanted somebody who had apparel experience running the apparel business. They'd always taken people from the footwear business. And he called me and he said, Mindy, I want someone, and I want you to do 4 things. Number 1, make Nike an apparel company, not a footwear company that makes apparel. Number 2, really diversify and not just be about men's, but be about men's, women's, youth, etc. 3, be about diversity inside and outside the company, right? And 4, be about innovation and disruption. And I was like, this checks every box. Mm-hmm. And I turned the job down. The reason being, for a lot of reasons, I couldn't move to Portland. And this is what was amazing about Phil. He called me back and he goes, Mindy, we are willing to work it out if you're willing to work it out. And fortunately, I have a husband who has supported every crazy thing I've ever done, and a daughter as well. And we decided to see if it could work, thinking maybe 1 year, and then we'll see where it goes. So I did this crazy commute from New York to Portland, and I was out of the country about 30% of the time for 6 years. But it was an incredible experience because I was part of the executive team that launched the new mission and vision of the company and saw what true transformation, cultural transformation married to business transformation can do. And I'm always quoted as saying, culture trumps strategy. It doesn't mean you don't have a strategy, but if you're not building an engaged, focused culture on the vision of where you go, you're never going to really get there. And that was the experience there. And if you look at the company today, it's 10 times practically what it was. And it was because of the focus on what they were going to do. The second part of it, when they launched their new mission and vision, to bring innovation and inspiration to every athlete, asterisk, if you have a body, you're an athlete, to really democratize what an athlete could be. And if you look at my background, and you said it, one of the things that has been very consistent is I'm always drawn to brands that are what I call aspirationally accessible. I like things that can touch a lot of people. At one point I almost went to work for one of the big luxury companies, and at the last minute I said, it's not me. I think that ability to have impact and touch people emotionally, not just what you're selling them, especially in today's environment, is just so important. The second thing about Phil, he came to me one day and he said, Mindy, I need your help. I go, well, what can I do? And he said, we are having regrettable losses of very talented women. And I really want to understand why. And I go, are you very serious about this? And he said, yes. And I said, you'll give me the assets that I need to do this. He said, yes. So we actually brought in a firm called Catalyst, and we did a cultural assessment globally around inclusion. And think about everything that we talk about today. This was in 2004. And what we found was we had women in senior roles, but there was no connection between them around the world. And they didn't feel inclusive and they didn't feel connected. So along with one of the other senior executives, I started their first Women's Leadership Council and brought the senior leaders from around the world together. And there had been talented women who'd been working there for many years who'd never even met anyone. They didn't have the connection, they didn't have the network, they didn't have the mentorship. The other thing that we did, which again, we were one of the first at the time, we changed our hiring policies because it would be like, oh, so-and-so, let's just give him the job. You couldn't fill an open position unless 50% of the qualified candidate pool was diverse. Now, you could ultimately make a decision based on who you thought the best candidate would be, but you had to have that pool of candidates. And the impact that made on the organization was so powerful. And we started a speaker series like this as well. We bring people in, we started a mentorship program. And that for me was such a learning. And the diversity piece has been a very core part of my philosophy for many years. Before I worked for Tommy, before I worked for Ralph in the 80s, I worked for one of the preeminent Black designers named Willie Smith. First designer to believe that fashion came from the street up, not couture down. If you look at the world today, that's where it is. First designer to bring artists and fashion together, Barbara Kruger, Keith Haring, Christo. And that formed a real basis for me around the power of diverse thinking and culture. And so, fast forward to that, if you look at today's environment, if you don't have diversity within your business, you're basically impeding your ability to be successful. And so it's always been a real philosophy for me.
You not only shone a light on diversity within Nike, but also within Nike's marketing. Can you talk a little bit about choosing Serena Williams for some of the marketing campaigns?
Sure. Well, when Serena's contract with Puma was up, I went into Phil and I said, we need Serena Williams. And, if you watch the movie, her father wasn't really easy to deal with and negotiate. He's like, no. And I go, Phil, you gave me a mandate, apparel company, diversity, innovation, and you want us to be known as an apparel company. We have the #1 female athlete in the world. She is diverse. She's all about fashion. And she needs to be at Nike. So we signed Serena. and who is a very close friend of mine to this day. And actually, she just joined as a senior advisor to Kinsella, which is the firm I'm now working with. And it was the US Open, and this was in 2005. And she comes out, we did a PR event at the Nike store. We had a huge glacier, and it was Serena and I on stage, and we made her, it was a performance fabric, but it was denim. She had a denim skirt, black performance top, leather jacket, and they had done custom sneakers for her and put a piece on it to make it look like black leather boots. And she shows up the next day at the US Open, and the officials made her take the boots out because they said it was too extreme. We had more PR in 2 days than in the history of the company, right? And obviously she ended up being such an incredible spokesperson and really lived the brand, and we worked closely together, and then we obviously added another athlete. But you know, it's just an example of sometimes you have to disrupt. And I always say, in today's landscape, and look at what's happened over the last few months, you want to be provocative, but you never want to be polarizing. So, you know, you want to do things that are going to make people recognize your brand or your business or a statement you want to make, but you never want to polarize people. And a lot of people in today's world are looking to get younger audience, or they're looking to diversify their customer base, and that's fantastic. But what you don't want to do is either ignore or polarize your existing. You want to bring everyone along, and I think that's a learning experience a lot of companies are going through today.
I was going to say, I think that's a fine line. I think we've all seen a lot of companies in the news lately, and I think they could be stepping over that line. But to your point, it is a balancing act.
An example of that is, you know, when I made the decision to go to, at the time, IAC Retail, where HSM was, and you know, I think about it all the time, because when I decided to leave Nike, my daughter was going into her later years of high school, my parents weren't doing well, I had done that commute, and I loved the company, but it just wasn't sustainable. And I think everyone expected me to go run some other big known, you know, brand. And when it was announced that I was leaving Nike to go join Barry Diller and take over Home Shopping Network, and I was the 8th CEO in 10 years, right? Everyone thought I'd have a midlife crisis and I was insane. You know, you're at Nike, you're the cool kid. You know, you're at your neighbor's house in the backyard and people go, who do you work for? And you go, Nike. They go, wow, right? All of a sudden, I go to this company, I'm in the backyard and people go, you know, I've shopped on it. And I said, why are you whispering? You know, this is amazing. But it goes back to the risk taking and what do you see? And I said, this is unbelievable, because mobile was exploding. Video commerce was exploding, and not yet in the US, but I'd been spending so much time in Asia and other markets. And I said, they have to stop just trying to be QVC. They should become an editorial program network. Like if Food Network, HGTV, DIY, Style was a content network, but you could sell the product. But it needed kind of a lot of work going in there. And you know, we went and said, okay, we're going to rebrand, we're going to build a new team, we're going to do this. And we need to get a broader audience, because the audience was aging significantly. I said, but we can't lose who we have. She's been with us and loves us. So how do we bring new, but also bring her along? And you know, when we decided to go into spaces like entertainment or music or all the chef portfolios, et cetera, beauty diversified, when we worked with a celebrity, no one could bring someone on or hire them without me meeting them, because I wanted to make sure that they were going to have respect for who we were and what we did. And the first thing, though, I had to do was change the culture. Imagine 8 CEOs in 10 years. They were just waiting for the next one to go. Like, how long is she going to stay? And I remember the head of HR said to me, Mindy, what do you want to do on your first day? And I said, well, what does every other employee do on their first day? And she goes, I don't know, they go to employee orientation. I said, well, I'm going to employee orientation. So I show up, there's about 25 people, and we go around the room, what do you do? I'm backstage TV, I'm merchandising, I'm production, and they go to me, I go, I'm the new CEO. And I spent the day in the call center, in TV, in back, and it went viral. So by the time I got up the next morning to do a town hall, people felt it was going to be different because they'd lost pride in what they do. The campus was not in great shape. And one of the things, people say, what are you proud of? And there's a Harvard Business Review article. And when I got there, I said, I've got to make people feel pride. I want them to yell out of the top of the window who they work for. I said, but I can't afford to renovate. We got bigger priorities right now. I had to write down $150 million of bad product and, a lot of challenges. But I said, I've got to do something. And I did a walk around the campus. And I said, we can clean it up. We can power wash it. And then I realized that there were like thousands of mismatched broken chairs. So I called the CEO of Herman Miller. And I said, I need 2,500 Aeron chairs. And I need them delivered on the same day. And so it was a Friday, we brought in dumpsters and we gave everybody the day off to clean everything. And then when everybody came back to work, some people, we were 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, so some people, but on Monday when most people came back to work, everyone had a new chair. All the old chairs were gone and the new chairs. I had 700 emails that day. You would think that, and you know what it is? Because people felt that somebody did something for them. They cared about them, and they were going to care about the company. We had parking spots, and the parking spot said vendor. I changed every parking spot to say partner. So it goes back to the culture has to be reinvigorated first before you can execute against the vision.
And the things you're saying are not small things in the sense of, I'm sure that many Herman Miller chairs was not inexpensive. I'm sure Elizabeth could tell us. They are small things in the sense that you gave someone a new chair. You changed the name on their parking spot. You didn't give them all a $10,000 raise. And you were able to turn a culture with something as simple as calling someone by a name that truly meant something to them or gave them a sense of pride. So really like to hear that.
Yeah, you really realize that, in today's world, people have a lot of options, right? Options of where they want to work. You've got all this, unique situation with flexible workforce and everything else. And if you want to create loyalty, that only comes from building culture and making people feel valued, and especially in today's environment.
So you transformed that, making the team feel valuable into an extremely valuable company that you then took public. Can you talk to us about when you took HSN public?
Yeah, by the way, pre-COVID, I thought that was going to be the crisis of my career because I took a company public in August 2008, 2 weeks before the Lehman bankruptcy. And, I had joined when it was IAC, and I knew when I went to join Barry that eventually there should be an event. We were really the cash cow that built IAC, but we didn't fit into the portfolio any longer. It was more a tech portfolio. And so it was November of 2007, he called and he goes, we're ready. I go, I'm ready. So we're getting ready to go public. We had relaunched the business in the summer of 2006, and it literally took off. So it was the perfect timing to really be able to bring in additional capital and do a lot of the things we wanted to do. So woman who was our CFO, Judy Schmeling, which probably some of you know, she and I spent the summer of 2008 on the road show. Again, 2 women meeting with almost all men, talking about shopping on video and TV, right? But we raised, we did that. And literally we went public August '08. Our stock came out at 10, and then the world fell apart. We couldn't even get coverage. We had to go to the buy side versus the sell side. And by December 2008, the stock was at $1.20 and our market cap was smaller than our receivable balance. But the business was great. HSN actually grew in 2008, 2009. Some of our higher end businesses like Frontgate had a bit of a tougher time, but the HSN business. And it's because we said, no matter what, we want our customer to feel this is a safe place for her. There's no negative on HSN. There's no bad news. We're gonna keep her. And we adjusted the products we sold to the reality of that time. But it was so stressful, if you can imagine. But I was very fortunate to have, it was my first time as a public company CEO. I had a new board I'd never worked with before, but I was very fortunate they had trusted me. So when I went to them and said, look, I'm willing to make hard decisions around what we have to do to ensure that we can get through this, but here's what we need to protect. We need to protect our innovation engine, because if we do that, we'll come out of this, because so many people are retreating, and they did. So when things opened up, we were the first company to do video commerce in an iPhone, right? Because we had kept the innovation going. And then, the business took off from it. And I think at the high, the stock was at 75. But how people got through that time period, if you do a case study, and there was some relevancy during COVID too, people who leaned in and said, all right, I'll make really hard decisions, but what do I have to protect? I've got to protect my culture. I've got to protect my people. And I have to still think that there's a future, right? And so I was actually, in a strange way, fortunate to have lived through that, especially as we had to get through COVID.
Speaking of getting through COVID, during COVID, you were the CEO of WW, which was formerly known as Weight Watchers. And one of the studies show that every year, nearly 50% of Americans are actually trying to lose weight. And of those, roughly 40% are men. So I want to make sure you all know in this room, it's relevant to all of us, okay? But when a company is considering a rebrand, like you did with Weight Watchers, and it's a 50-plus-year-old brand at this point in time, what should a CEO take into consideration?
So just to give you a perspective on, how that even came about. I'd been at HSNI for 11 years between IC, and we were looking to transition to a new CEO, and I was potentially going to be executive chairman, and that's what I was going to do. It's no secret, though, I was a little frustrated because our largest competitor, Liberty with QVC, actually owned 40% of the company. So I was limited into, couldn't buy back more stock, couldn't take the company, private or strategic. But it was an incredible, incredible business. And then I had that moment again. And I said, you know what? I want to do one more thing. I want to do one more transformation. But this time, if I do it, I want to have business impact, but I want to have human impact. For my whole life, I've been was on the UNICEF board for 11 years. I've done a lot in every company I worked for. So HSN Cares did a lot within the local community, the national community, and then we actually had global partners, Habitat being an incredible partner. And it's always been so important to me. But I was like, what am I going to do? And at the time, I kept getting a lot of calls to go run other retail companies. I'd become chairman of the National Retail Federation. But that's not what I wanted to do. And in probably 2016, I saw the announcement that Oprah had partnered, become a shareholder on the board with Weight Watchers. And I thought that was really interesting. And the fact that they wanted to be more wellness oriented, including the #1 weight loss program on the planet. So I kind of bought some stock, but I didn't really think about it. Then a year later, early 2017, I saw that they had parted ways with their CEO. I said, oh, that's interesting. Still. And then in, I don't know, December of 2016, I got a phone call from a recruiter. Mindy, why don't you go be the CEO of Tiffany? I said, Bobby, nobody needs another piece of jewelry. It's not me. It's not what I want to do. I want something that's going to have more impact. It's a great brand, amazing brand. It'd be a great role. If you saw the New York store, it's spectacular. I said, but don't you have the Weight Watchers search? She said, yeah. I go, why haven't you called me? She goes, Mindy, you run a much bigger company. You're in a completely different space. What? She goes, are you interested? I go, I don't know if I'm interested. I'm curious. And that's how the whole thing came about. And it was kind of crazy because that January I was becoming chairman of the NRF. My daughter was about to have her first child. There was a lot of other things going on, and they said, would you fly out to California and spend a day with Oprah and have a conversation with her about this? And I said, yes, and here's a date I can go, and I've got to come right back because I was still working. I said, but it could change depending on when my daughter has her baby. I mean, this is how crazy it was. But that's what I did, and we spent an entire day philosophically talking about what the potential was. And when I came back and I said, all right, I'm willing to have more conversations. But it took me quite some time to make the decision to do that. And I ended up starting in July 2017. And to your point, this was an incredible brand that had been transforming people's lives for now 60 years. But it had lost relevancy. Just to give you an idea, in the United States alone, because a lot of the business had been franchised, there were 18 different logos, right, on everything. They didn't have a digital rel platform in the app, et cetera, et cetera. And we really wanted to convey that we were for everyone. And the other reason I joined is that the obesity epidemic had gotten so profoundly extreme, particularly in the United States. Just to let you know, the #1 cause of COVID deaths was obesity. But the thing that hit me the most, especially after having a grandchild, is that today's 2-year-old has more of a chance of being unhealthy and obese than living a healthy life. And said, we need to try and change that. And that was the impetus around a lot of the things that we did. We started the Healthy Living Coalition. We started WW Good around the issues of food insecurity. We actually got a law changed in Congress called the Emerson Act. Biden approved it to help with food waste around food insecurity. So a lot of impact work that was also done. And then in January 2020, partnered with Oprah to do a 9-city arena tour around helping people live their best life. 9 cities, 20 to 40,000 people per arena for a full day of a reassessment of their life. Kicked off in Fort Lauderdale, actually on January 6, 2020, And it was the most unbelievable experience, I think, I've ever had, sitting in the REM, watching people cry and like reassess their life. And that's kind of Oprah's magical power. From 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. Then we had a VIP, group after that. The finale was March 8th in Denver, okay? We had the finale, we had our board meeting in Denver to thank everyone for the work that they had done. Flew back to New York on that Sunday, had to shut everything down on Wednesday. Not just our offices, but we had 30,000 physical meetings a week in 13 different countries. And we were gonna have to shut them down. And this goes back to culture. I called the whole group together, the operations team, the tech team, the product team, and said, we cannot leave our members alone. Now, granted, there was a financial reason for that because the physical meeting membership was significantly higher. I said, look, we're not going to get new signups, but we need to keep retention, but we can't leave our members alone. They're used to coming together. I called the CEO of Zoom, Eric, and said, you need to help me. And we worked 24 hours a day for literally 6 days. I actually flew down here, I had a second granddaughter at the time. It was their baby naming at the temple. The temple was shut down, but the rabbi did it. I literally had to lock myself in a room. And we were 24 hours. And in 6 days, we launched all 30,000 meetings with finders, with privacy on Zoom in 13 different countries. And it basically saved the business. Now, we had to make really hard decisions because you can imagine the financial ramifications of that. But we were gonna get through it. But it was a crazy time. If you can, we all know that. But I think what I've learned throughout my entire career, particularly around transformation, I actually taught a course at Yale Executive Education on the CEO's perspective on business transformation. And I say that transformation is one of the most overused words in business. People think they put a new statement on the wall and they're transformed. No, it's large scale, ugly, radical change to get to you where to go. And there's things you need to have. You need to have the vision that you think and the strategy aligned with that vision. You need to have a culture and people that are embracing and aligned with that vision. You need to have the support of your board. You need to have investment dollars, and you need to have resilience. And I put up a slide, and on the left side of the slide are all these articles about how incredibly brilliant I am. And on the right side is all of these articles on what a disaster, right? Because they're both going to happen at some point in that journey. It's never going to be linear. But at the end of the day, I think just from a perspective, whether you're with a legacy brand or the business I'm in now, which is one of the fastest growing advisory firms, but you still have to start with the culture of what you want to have and the service and the alignment that you want to have with. Now today, I joke around, for 45 years, the consumer has been my client and I've been the client, and now I have clients. So you see things from a very different perspective.
Sure. I've got one more question for you before we open it up to the audience. You sit on several boards, and I know that you've talked about your passion for different projects, and that's what you truly immerse yourself in. You sit on the board of Fanatics, Hungry Root, Herself Health, UNICEF, formerly Bloomin' Brands. You shared that at Fanatics, there is a focus on thinking consumer backwards. Can you explain the thinking consumer backwards concept and its importance?
Sure. I think it's really, really important today when companies are looking to unlock growth that they have to think of it in maybe different ways than in the past. Loyalty and that one-on-one relationship with the consumer is everything. So to give you the Fanatics example, Michael Rubin, who spun out Fanatics, I mean, he's genius. I mean, he's a visionary, he's genius, he's Michael. And I was one of the first independents to join the board because ultimately, you know, they were going to have some kind of event, either go public, et cetera. And at the time, it was Fanatics Commerce. And it was the largest sports commerce business that existed. It had unbelievable growth. They had a valuation of about $4 billion at the time, which was great. But they also had built this unbelievable Fanatics fan base. Today it's 80 million consumers, okay? And Michael's mind was like, okay, we have this asset of these people who are such fans. What else do they want? And what happened because of all of that, what else do they do around sports? They went from a vertical to a platform. So today it's Fanatics Commerce, Fanatics Collectibles, Fanatics Gaming and Betting, Fanatics Content, Fanatics Livestream. And today it's a $31 billion valuation for the company. And it was all about unlocking what that consumer was going to want around the world of sport. And there's a lot of companies like that. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy in that we think this way. And I remember when I used to speak all the time when I first joined NRF, because I was one of the only board members that didn't have physical retail. We were direct to consumer. And if you remember in the early days of e-commerce, the stores looked at their e-commerce, partners as competition, right? That's a disaster. You have to look at it from the consumer lens back. And in today's world, it's even more important because where they're consuming content is everywhere, right? They're buying through social media. And physical stores are still incredible. Actually, they're becoming more important again and resurging in terms of flagships and all that. But you really have to think of every single touch point. The second piece of this, and we talk a lot about this in all my boards, your competition is not just people in your business. So if you're in the beauty business, yeah, there's other beauty brands. That's not your only competition. Your competition is the last great experience someone had. And that could be with an Uber. That could be with a delivery. That could be with being treated in a certain way, because that's the world we're in today. So you just have to think of everything very differently in today's environment. And then I think the last piece is, how is technology enabling you to do that? I mean, we all know the hot buzzwords AI, right? But what does that mean truly to your business? So Hungry Root, for example, was one of the first AI platforms that's been built to personalize and customize grocery menu planning, recipe, et cetera, but all built on technology. But the customer doesn't see the technology, they see the benefit of it and what it's providing them. And that's what we all have to be thinking about.
Well, this has been wonderful. I think, are we at time? Yes, we're almost at time. We've got time for a few questions. So who has the first question? Does someone have a mic? Okay. Penny? I put on my glasses to see you guys.
After the Bud Light debacle, what would you, if you were Anheuser-Busch, what would you do right now?
This topic of conversation comes up everywhere. And again, I'm going to give you my personal perspective. It goes back to the provocative versus polarizing. The problem they had is not just the ad that was provocative and polarizing, their response was provocative and polarizing. And it still is, right? I think they have to be a lot more forthright in coming out and acknowledging and respecting. And I think that how they handled it is why the reaction is what it is. And in today's environment, you can't sugarcoat anything. You can't hide. It's worse because now you're going to alienate someone else. We're in a very polarizing world right now. You look at social media, you look what's happening in Twitter land and now with new. You've got to be thinking. The second thing I would say that was a big mistake of theirs, it didn't just start with Dylan Mulvaney. Their head of marketing went on public networks and literally denigrated their existing customer and said, we don't want just those fratty people. You don't denigrate somebody who has kept your brand number one for a long time, who loves it and who's been loyal. So it started there, to be honest, and then it went all the way. And someone's got to stand up and take responsibility. I mean, they still haven't made any changes within the company.
Tony?
So you spoke a lot maybe about the importance of people and culture and how important that is. In the conversations we have in our roundtables every month, the number one concern is always access to talent. It's a real challenge that we have right now. We've got generations that think very different within our organizations. So what would you share in terms of advice with leaders here about that big challenge in assembling, even finding talent, and then obviously keeping them engaged when you have so many different points of view within your own organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge and an opportunity within every organization right now, because you do have a lot of different generations in the workforce. I think a couple of things. I think, really not just hiring talent, but hiring for culture, making sure there's diversity, making sure there's allyship within the company. So I am not a fan of 100% remote work because I think flexibility is important, but I also think community is critical. And being able to provide mentorship and allyship and people feeling that they have a connection to other people and being very purposeful about that, I think is important in an organization to keep people. And I see it right now with younger people. Like the firm I'm with is a FaceTime firm. It's four days, a week. And what it does, we have partners who, like myself, have 45 years of experience. One of the things that's different about our firm is we all have operating experience. But we have a lot of young researchers. We have people out of investment banking. We have people out of consulting. We have young moms, everything. That mentorship and people feeling like you're, interfacing with other people that are going to provide you with assets, right? And you feel part of something. I think that's what every company has to be thinking about right now as they're determining what their philosophy is going to be about going to work. Every company is not created equal. You have to understand the type of company you have, the type of culture you have, and it's no different than when we talk about polarizing versus provocative, right? Even in things like influencers and social media. If you're Red Bull, you're going to have one group of what's, you can do, and if you're Save the Children, you have another. So I think a lot of it depends on the firm, but I do believe that creating community, creating engaged culture, purposeful interaction, how are you bringing people together is really important. And I use the word allyship all the time, that people feel that they want to invest in other people. And I always say the reason I've been successful is I have focused on making other people successful. Because if they're successful, the business will be successful, and I'll be, and you want people to feel like that, I think.
We have time for one final question.
Where did you see technology fitting in to enable this discovery process of building culture, bringing people together, mentorship not only from the top, but from the ground? We need to learn what we need to learn.
Yeah, I think technology, you can look at the kind of danger side and the positive side. I try and look at the positive side. I think AI ultimately is going to be a game changer. I think the utilization of data, I think any company today has to be data-led. And whether it's how you're interfacing with the consumer or your own employees. It's not, I would be less afraid that jobs are going away, because any new technology has actually created new jobs and it allows for new training. But if you look at where AI can come in and really identify shifts in culture or identify within an organization what people are doing and what they're not doing, you can have such a realization if you're going through a difficult period, and you can make those changes in real time if you're using the data effectively. One of the gentlemen that he's also a partner, but I'm working close with, his name is Oscar Salazar. He was the co-founder of Uber and the CTO, and he's done another, and he's starting Concello Tech, and he's doing all of the work around not just AI, but building a data platform, because we work across so many industries and businesses to identify commonality and things that can be done, and learning from one business to another without violating any kind of privacy. So I think being able to use data to inform, it doesn't take away human gut, right? That's still important. Creativity is still important. There's a big debate right now, for example, and depending on who you talk to in Hollywood, is it going to make actors go away? Is it going to make writers go away? Well, technology is amazing, but there are still going to be Einsteins and talents and all of that. So I think creativity still wins, but using data today is going to be critical.
I just want to thank you so much. It is so
Well,
evident.
thank you
and
for inviting me.
obvious.
It's my favorite place.
I was just going to say, it is both evident and obvious how you've been able to do what you have at the companies you have, where you came into this room full of strangers. And I think we're all leaving feeling like we have takeaways. We feel like we can help build cultures in our own companies. And that's really a gift. So thanks for sharing that with us today.
And I'm thrilled to be coming back. And I've always stayed part of the community, even leaving co-chair the Habitat CEO Build, which is spectacular if any of you have not. But it'll be great to be back primary.
We'll be glad to have you back. Mindy does have a hard stop at 9:30, so if you have any questions or you'd like a picture with her, go ahead and get that quickly before she heads out. And we'll look forward to seeing you all next month. Thanks.